The Diary of Thoughts, Part 21. Emotions, Laughs and Tears. About moments written by Carlos Pacheco. There are laughs and tears that make part of our lives. Sometimes it's good to laugh, but sometimes we also can feel good while crying. That's the magic about laughter and tears, as those last ones clean the soul of human beings. The conventional ideas about crying are related to false notions about being strong or being weak, as the pureness of the soul has nothing to do with those notions that society created. It's a natural attitude and behavior that makes part of all of us, without having any correlation with what society eventually established would be its significance. In reality, we were all born while crying and not laughing. This natural event can be examined as an initial behavior that can manifest our inner will to reject or accept this dimension that was imposed on us. After all, nobody asked us if we wanted to be here in first place. The question is if, at the beginning of our lives, our tears were caused by pain, fear, or finally by happiness about the fact of being born. Our first tears can be the expression of rejection, as also the result of the happiness that we are feeling while joining this dimension. But let's not forget that we all were born crying instead of laughing. Maybe this means something that we, people in general, want to ignore. Happiness and suffering are intrinsically connected by the attitude, the reaction of crying, meaning that both attitudes are not as different as that. It's like the two extremes that are touching, and in between, there is an entirely different collection of feelings that can be manifested by that same reaction. We can have tears of joy as we can have tears of pain and suffering as a manifestation, an expression of our feelings. These expressions of what we are and what we represent are pure and simple, better than to hide behind something, behind an image that doesn't fit us. The act of holding a baby in our arms while crying is one of the purest sensations that we can have in our lives. Within us, there is the feeling that we'll protect somebody, and at the same time we love that human being. Also, at the same moment and unconsciously, we put ourselves in that same place, even if our memories don't recollect those moments of our lives. Life is a mystery that is manifested by the behaviors that are practiced by us all, without having the notion about this natural fact. Tears can be brought to our eyes under circumstances or contexts of beauty, as this one always translates and gives us its messages of tranquility and harmony, which means that happiness can make us cry. The happiness brought by the exercise of friendship and love can bring us those tears of joy. At those moments, our laughter can be surmounted by tears, but their meaning can be more representative of our happiness. There are also tears of rage or fear, which mean that this reaction is submitted to several emotional states, and the meaning of each tear has to be examined in each condition or context. The range of emotions is very vast, and its related reactions are multiple and also corresponding to each person's character. There are also tears of extreme suffering. There are laughs that expresses joy and fun, and others that reflect anger and suffering, as manifestations of human beings are continuously being shown through these different emotions. After all, these are nothing but emotions that make part of our daily behavior and relationship with others. Smiles are connected to laughs, but they don't forcibly mean that they represent manifestations of joy. Behind a smile, we can find manifestations of jealousy and hypocrisy, even malignancy. That's why relationships are so difficult to become the object of a consolidation between human beings, as they are different from each other, so, all these emotions will be a target of doubts and fears. I have this recent friend that I love very much, as she reminds me my daughter, who expressed to be afraid of me because she considered that, quote, I do everything with a smile, end quote. This after I told her about a particular circumstance that happened in my life. I told her that one day, while in the exercise of my military functions, during the Portuguese colonial war period in Africa, I killed some rabbits while driving my car on an Air Force field. Of course that I was telling her that with a big smile on my face, even laughing, but at the same time I also assumed that I was under the influence of some alcohol, which doesn't avoid the final result of this stupid behavior. Sometimes in our lives, it can happen we make mistakes while smiling or laughing, as we are simply human beings. However, this doesn't avoid that we'll be judged by our actions by people who interpret a smile as a pleasure, while instead, it can become a very discreet way to assume our guilt. Sometimes, not even our smiles and laughs are interpreted by other people as they should be, as it's difficult to know each one's soul and its different manifestations of joy, happiness, criticism, malignancy or sarcasm. In this last particular case, as a humble confession within an excellent context of friendship. Smiles, laughs and tears are finally tough to identify, as they will always match an area of our souls that is forbidden knowledge of other people, sometimes even ours, and which can be only partially identified by knowing each other through a positive relationship. Smiles, laughs and tears can become a disguise of our inner problems, anguishes and frustrations, but can also express the pureness of our feelings, the authenticity of our souls. Finally, let's say that laughs and tears belong to that large family named emotions. Without emotions there would be almost no meaning for a life, as emotions give us even the attributions, not only about sentimental values, but also about our actions and attitudes. The attribution of values concerning the material that is all around us is also related to emotions. There are thousands of models of watches in the world, still there are some who captures our attention and our emotions along with that attraction. Without emotions, everything would be completely naked from its significance, as everything that is around us is merely material and visual, so their values are directly implicated to the degree of importance that we put on them, the emotions that are connected to this fact. Emotions are a vast field to explore, as they can include positive and negative effects in our lives. Some people can explore other people's emotions by manipulating them or exercising emotional abuse to simply control them. The expression emotional abuse stands for an existing reality in society, as it might play a more destructive role than the physical abuse, and at the same time, it contains extremely painful consequences that are manifested by behaviors that are conditioned to that same kind of abuse. In fact, emotional abuse is practiced not only at a global level but also within a familiar context, women being most of the victims of this behavior along with physical punishment. Due to the supremacy of the male sex along with certain existing mentalities, this abuse can actually cripple humans' minds, reducing the other person to pieces, little by little. But let's not forget that emotional abuse can also be practiced by women towards men, as it represents an existing state of mind that is revealed by attitudes of controlling the other person on their emotions. One day I also published a small blog, where I denounced this particular situation, taking into consideration that this is a fact that affects maybe millions of homes. I had some examples around me with that same social context, namely damaging not only the lives and relationship of a couple but at the same time being extended to their children's minds. This article is worth to be read, as, by doing it, people become aware of some behaviors that are linked to this situation, being able to identify them and eventually correct something by the fact of understanding them. Search for Carlos Pacheco, about emotional abuse, the blog, on blogspot.com or Blogger. For those who just want to read the content of this subject, here it is as a way to try to understand the origin of this behavior, and by doing so, becoming more able to handle and minimize that particular situation. I also decided to mention this particular subject in this chapter, as I think that it is essential to lots of people to be aware of this reality that is affecting their lives, and it is directly related to the word relationship. As you know, this word represents a lot to me, as it is the key to solve lots of problems within society. Quoting, "Every time one imposes their will on another, it is an act of violence." Mahatma Gandhi, end quote. This emotional abuse can have tragic consequences on people's lives, namely children, as adults can also be affected independently from their endurance to accept that fact. The accumulation of emotional abuse can change the character of a person radically by being submitted to that kind of aggression. Let's also not forget that are people exercising emotional abuse without noticing it, sometimes because they were raised on that same basis. In this case, it depends on the other person to understand that particular situation and try to overcome it by using comprehension along with compassion. This support will always imply a hard price to pay, depending on the present level of love and friendship between two or more people. Only by understanding the condition, people will be able to identify this social problem and correct it, along with the support of family and friends being these last ones responsible to understand them in return. It's all about understanding. It's all about logic, as generally the moment we understand something, we'll be able to correct it or overcome it. This kind of abuse is extended to several areas in society, creating social conflicts even at a professional level, while workers are sometimes submitted to this behavior to obtain supposed profitability, at times leading to tragic events as suicide. At a certain friendly level, emotional abuse is practiced while discriminating people to get them far away. One of the keys put into practice is to create a bad ambience to someone, through practicing emotional abuse. Let's also be aware that somehow, one way or another, we're all emotionally abused either by minor or major attitudes that bless our feelings and affect our emotions. This situation arrives since childhood and exists almost along our lives, being the only difference the fact that later on, we'll be able to understand it, though eventually dealing with it. We can also realize at what point children can be affected as a consequence of their limitation to handle this situation, starting with the fact of being unable to express themselves. Also, emotional abuse can be practiced by governments to control society, creating psychological conditions that affect a whole population by artificial means. Emotional abuse is extended not only to human beings but also towards animals, since there are people who educate them under that basis. To create a conditioned behavior on an animal is nothing but practicing emotional abuse, not considering that animals have their emotions like any other living species on Earth. At the limit, let's also admit that life and nature exercise on all of us a continuous emotional abuse, as we are all submitted to its rules, either gracious or punishable. These are the natural elements that make us react and survive the best way we can in adapting our emotions to each different context. Emotions are also related to dreams and ambitions, since these last ones are the result of the evaluation of the first element. There must always be an emotion involved to be able and have the necessary motivation to achieve a goal in our lives. That achievement will cause us an emotion of joy and pride, or, in certain cases, will cause us emotions of sadness and pain, even frustration if we don't achieve that target. In every kind of relationship, there are emotions involved. Friendship and love wouldn't also be possible without this gift that we got from creation. This feeling, these perceptions and reactions that are brought by our emotions are simply expressions of our souls, the manifestations of life, the demonstrations of nature itself, as we also make part of it. Emotions are not related to logic regarding its expressions, but they are based on intrinsic natural elements that are at the origin of what we are and what we represent. That's why without emotions we would simply be machines executing mere tasks like a computer that doesn't have a soul. We can also experiment with emotions emotionally, or under a logic and controlled emotional behavior. But the fact is that emotions are present in every single reaction and behavior of our lives. In spite that sadness is an emotion, this one can be a sign of the lack or decrease of the necessary emotions that are vital to our lives. In this last case, emotions are related to the necessary energy to make us surmount our daily adversities, problems and other obstacles, even survival. It's true that our inner energy is directly dependent on our emotions, as these last ones reflect our state of mind. This state of mind is also related to our psychological and spiritual condition. In fact, our inner energy, the force that makes us live and fight against any adversities, depends on emotions and the attributions of fundamental values created by them. There are simple things and events that represent absolutely nothing to some people, while others will consider them essential for their existence, as values and principles. These are elements that make part of personal emotions that can help us or destroy us, depending on the context of its occurrence. The conflict between emotions and principles and values is constant. In war, we have to control our emotions to be able to survive, forgetting all principles and values that were supposed to rule society. Sometimes, this leads us to defend ourselves and fight for wrong causes, still some pretending that they are stronger by the fact of committing massive murder in the name of politics and power. Politics and power manipulate and condition our emotions, creating false values that don't exist to justify actions. In fact, this is nothing but the manipulation of our emotions that puts in place a whole political and economical system. As emotions are directly related to energy, it's crucial that they'll always be positive in their consequences. In cases of physical sickness, in extreme situations that imply terminal conditions, our energy is affected by our emotions, as these last ones can take away the necessary strength to fight for our existence. Emotions can cause us psychological conditions leading us to states of complete depression, even madness, meaning that emotions are to be considered as a particular delicate expression of our spirits that, after all, control and condition our behaviors and reactions. Emotions are present in every second of our lives. In every moment there is an emotion. Moments and emotions make life. Let's not forget that the purpose of life is to live and not to survive. All moments of our lives implies emotions, from the time we were born, until the moment we will join the universal motion. There are moments of joy, fear, anguish, despair and rage and anger and so on, but no moment is lost. Every one of them makes part of our emotions, and those moments will never be lost in space and time, the time of our existence. I also wrote something about moments, as our lives are nothing but fragments of time lost in space. The sum of all those moments, good and bad, makes the history of our life, our road, our experience that we will carry when we join the creation. Hank the Voice BEUKEMA reads from the Diary of Thoughts poems, written by Carlos Pacheco.
Moments, segments of time. There aren't moments lost, forgotten. There are only moments, segments of time. Moments of despair, moments of joy, of sadness, that make the beauty of life. Moments of wanting to understand about your moments, and the moments, the segments of other people's time. Other moments are abstract, not visible. They are segments of thoughts which are nothing but ourselves, unable to express themselves without feeling the moments, without living and observing the events that occur, the segments that result from our existence. Sometimes we cannot understand the expression, the extension of the segments, of the moments. Moments, segments of time, are a tiny fraction of a huge equation, essential, existential, translated by the universe, apparently controversial, but coherent, expressing the dimension that exists in our minds. The past is about moments that lasted, but they're no longer there. They are memories that will remain in our spirit. The present is simply the segment, the moment of your thoughts. It is nothing more than the experience, the awareness about your life. The future is everything that you want to achieve, never stopping to believe that the moments of the past, along with your moments, will always last. As life is made of moments, segments of time, thoughts and ideas arising somewhere, sometime in Luxembourg, during some segments of time, a few moments of my life.
The Diary of Thoughts, end of part 21. Written by Carlos Pacheco. www.diaryofthoughts.com